Thanks for your company this morning. Netball Australia has been handed a lifeline from the most unlikely sponsor after severing their multi-million-dollar deal with Hancock Prospecting. So who's fronting up the 15 mil? The Victorian Government. For more, we're joined by Minister for Government Services in the NDIS, Bill Shorten, and Editor-in-Chief of Stellar Magazine, Sarah Lemarquand. Nice to see you both. So, Bill, Victoria's got $165 billion of net debt. That's more than any other state. Is there a problem with the optics of this?
I think it's great that Dan Andrews and the Victorian Government have stepped up to back in netball in Australia. I mean, you look all around Australia, when it comes to building football stadiums for blokes to play in or male-dominated sporting events, they've been getting sponsorship for a long time from governments and private sector. For once, the women, the elite women athletes of netball are going to get a modest sponsorship. I mean, in the big scheme of things, I think it's wonderful, especially as Gina Rinehart tossed up her hands and abandoned the sport. So I'm glad the Victorians have stepped in.
Look, I think there's actually a decent amount of support for Gina Rinehart in taking the position that she did. That's one that's divisive. But if you look at what Dan Andrews is spending, it's a drop in the ocean, right? But when you have a crisis with 000, ambulance response times, there's been a floods disaster. Is this the time to be spending money on sport?
Oh, no one would argue that ambulances are more important or cleaning up after the floods, but I don't think it's an either or. The reality is there is a lot of effort going into our ambulance system. It is crucial. There's a lot of effort going into flood relief, but I also think we're capable of supporting in a modest way women's sport. And I have to say that I actually am quite supportive of Danelle Wallam and the netball players in the recent matter, and so I think it's good for netball that a white knight has emerged.
So, Sarah, plenty argue this is a good value for money, and it is great for women's sport, but is it the best use of taxpayers' money?
Well, it is great for women's sport, but it's not a charitable act. I mean, let's not forget, Visit Victoria has a very strict charter, and its charter is to attract tourism to the state, because we all know that every tourist that visits the state pays for itself over and over again. So I actually think this investment is pretty low. I mean, you look at the branding that Visit Victoria and the greater state of Victoria will get by extension. We're talking about the Diamonds essentially making Melbourne their base. They're going to be wearing their logos all in games that are beamed all around the world. I mean, women's netball is a sport that's really got a spotlight rightfully shining on it at the moment. This is an absolute world-class champion team. I actually think it's smart money, and I know that it's sort of easy to spin it, as a lot of Dan Andrews' critics have said, oh, why would we take money out of areas that need it, what you've just talked about, hospital and those dire areas. But there's always going to be money in tourism. It's not as though this 15 mil has gone on, ferrying a bunch load of politicians around in their Comcars for a fancy lunch, or, redoing a bunch of stationery with a new letterhead. I think it's a really sensible stance. And I also applaud the Diamonds for standing by their principles. And I think Gina Rinehart was totally valid to make her decision too, but I really applaud Visit Victoria stepping in here.
And it will bring more international games to the state as well, which is a great thing.
It will pay for itself.
You talked about putting a spotlight on the city. Well, nothing more than what we're about to see today, right? That is the race between Melbourne and Sydney, right? You've got your dueling horse races today. Is the nationally iconic race that stops the nation. Melbourne Cup taking on Sydney's Big Dance. Bill, it's kind of like Paul Gallen fighting Carl, right? No competition.
Oh, completely like that.
Bill?
I assume you're saying Paul Gallen's the Melbourne Cup, though, just to be clear.
Well, open to interpretation.
Well, I think, it's great that Sydney's got a horse race, but, it is the support act today on the national racing card, isn't it? I mean, let's think about it. Melbourne versus Sydney. It's a bit like comparing Frank Sinatra to an Elvis impersonator at the Rooty Hill RSL, isn't it? No, the Melbourne Cup's got it hands down, but have a nice day in Sydney.
You need to spend more time at Rooty Hill RSL. That's a good show, I'm telling you, Bill.
I mean, look, I have to admit.
No, I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is.
Okay, Bill, I'm actually flying to Melbourne this morning to go to Flemington for the Melbourne Cup. You've almost talked me around. I'm thinking I might need to refund my flight. No, look, I'm not into this Sydney.
You know it's also going to hail. There's going to be
rivalry.
Thunderstorms and freezing cold.
Yes, exactly. It's a good thing Melbourne's got the Melbourne Cup because their weather sure isn't helping them, is it? And Visit Victoria needs to really fight that weather.
Well. Sarah, do you know that our very own journalistic integrity at the Today Show here has been called into question this morning by 3AW's Ross Stevenson? Listen to this.
Anyway, we're here to have fun. I just noticed the Today program on Channel 9, as I walked past, looked up, it had two reporters reporting on a split screen.
Yeah.
One at Flemington and one at Randwick.
There we go.
Why would you have someone at Randwick?
There's a lot of work been going on here, Ross.
On Melbourne Cup Day, for God's sake.
Well, the other...
Exactly, the audacity of us, right?
I am really flying into enemy territory today, aren't I? Mm-hmm. I will be flying the flag
you're
for
welcome,
Randwick
Sarah.
at Flemington.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Bill.
Hey, Bill, I just hope you've got your gum boots, your parka, your beanie and your gloves.
Yeah, and I've got my form guide.
Brilliant. Lovely. Well, have a great day,
It'll be
Jane. Just
fine.
before we go, I want to show you a picture that Bill sent in celebrating Halloween yesterday with the family. We've got a picture there. There we go.
Oh.
That was at the Shorten household yesterday afternoon. It was nuts, yeah. Didn't realise that so many kids there, Bill, but congratulations to you and Chloe. Have a great day, guys. Talk soon.